Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get underway. Thank you all so much for joining us here today to learn how to double your return when exhibiting. Naturally, you're probably thinking to yourself, what am I going to learn today? So I thought it would be best to just find out. So what we're going to be covering today is we're going to talk a little bit about a bit of an introduction, just a small one. Talk a little bit about exhibiting in general. What are some of the different ways to exhibit, the different areas to focus on for exhibiting. I want to then talk about the double your sales or double your return formula. I get that many people will exhibit because they want sales. Other people exhibit because they want to get some return via branding, etc. I then want to talk about there's some 15 different key areas that you can address during your exhibiting, both before, during, and after. But then I want to cover, and probably the main thing that people are going to be interested in is some of the tips for when you next exhibit. And then after that, what are some next steps to get additional resources? So that's what's in line for today. Before I get started, I just want to know a little bit. I had a quick chat to some of the people. I just want to know a little bit about you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a poll out there. So I will ask that you have a look at the poll and then answer the questions. Just gives me an idea of how often people are exhibiting. So if I can get you to vote for the different areas. Okay, so just waiting for a couple more. Alrighty, thank you. Everyone has voted. Let me show you the results. Basically, the majority of people are only exhibiting 1 to 2 times a year. And there's a couple who are doing 3 to 5 times a year. It's not uncommon for some smaller business, small organisations to have just a couple of different times to exhibit. But that gives me an idea in terms of where to focus, so thank you for that. All right, let's move on. Now that I know a little bit about you, and I know how often that you exhibit, you need to know a little bit about me in terms of who am I, what right have I to talk to you about the different elements of exhibiting. Part of my background, I worked for 10 years for a company called EDS. That glass building you see there is the Information Technology Pavilion in Dallas, Texas. I was based there for 12 months. There was a permanent trade show that we had, and we would host guests, clients through, people off the street, staff, school groups, and through that time discovered a whole lot about the techniques of exhibiting. I was then asked to bring some of that knowledge back and share it with others back in the home base about doing some of the different exhibiting and different IT shows. I also then worked for Oracle. They have a thing called Oracle Open World, and once a year in Australia and a couple of times in the States, as well as their Oracle user groups have a couple of different exhibitions each year. And so I was heavily involved with some of their different exhibition strategies, but also with working with the people who were working on the stand to make sure that they were up to speed with some of the different things that they were doing. I got out of the corporate world and set up a business called Merry Mentality. And with my first business partner, we created a product called the Professional Coaches Business System. We traveled all over Europe, America, and Australia selling a $900 product at the International Coach Federation, different conferences and trade shows. That was where I learned big time about exhibiting and what were some of the pitfalls, what were some of the amazing things, and what were some of the strategies for it. Since then, I've had some different clients that I've worked with in exhibiting and looking at different ways to exhibit their message. In particular, there was a client that I've worked with, Renegade Management, who were at a RSVP show. So there's not RSVP, the online dating, it's RSVP about speakers and conventions, etc. So I've done some with them. Also, one of my major clients is the Pregnancy, Babies and Children's Expo. And this is a session where I was addressing the exhibitors before I started the day. So I've been working with them for a couple of years now to help them get more, help the exhibitors get more from the show. So that's pretty much who I am. Since then, I've also been doing some I do some business coaching, keynote speaking, that kind of stuff. In particular, my key thrust with exhibiting is that it should not be a one-off. It should be something that you do with your business. So it's not just I run a business and, oh yeah, let's do a show. It must fit in with its business strategy so you know what's going on there as well. So it really is a key part of your business, not just an adjunct or an add-on to it. A lot of people will always ask me, they'll say, well, why should I exhibit? What's so good about trade shows or expos or markets, or what are some of the things that, why are the reasons that I should do it? Well, the first one is it adds up financially. Now, I'm the first to admit trade shows and exhibiting can be quite expensive, but if you look at the cost per lead, so that is the cost that it takes you to get a lead in for a sale, when you exhibit, it can be far cheaper than your traditional methods of marketing. For example, some of the larger companies have found that rather than spending a lot of money on TV, radio, magazines, even sales force, having your sales teams out there and doing a lot of feet on the ground work, having an expo or having a booth at an expo or trade show, the financial cost to get a lead is far less. So financially, it can pay off big time. And when you think about it, at a show, you've got the people who want what you've got all in the one area. So it makes sense. It really is a way of a shortcut to get people who are interested in your product. It's also a great place to exhibit your product or service in a manner so that people can touch it, feel it, be one with it. Let me give you an example, sort of an extreme case. The picture there is of the IO safe. Now, for those of you who don't know, Las Vegas is one of the great meccas of trade shows. And what IOSafe did at one of the IT trade shows there is they wanted to demonstrate their safe. Now, what the safe is for is to put your hard drive, your computer hard drive in, and it's waterproof, fireproof, does all the works. Now, when you see that written on paper, it really doesn't mean a great deal. So what they did is at the trade show towards the end of the day, they had some buses turn up and they took a whole bunch of prospective clients and a few journalists, and they drove them to a suburban house that they'd rented for the event that was all tidy. They took a photo of everybody. They then loaded that photo data onto the hard drive. They put the hard drive in the safe, and what they had erected out the back is a portable kiln which they turned on to some intense amount of heat. They put the IO safe in the kiln and basically set it on fire. They then took it out of the kiln and threw it into the swimming pool. So it's gone from one extreme of temperature to another, and also with a whole lot of water around. They then extracted it after about 4 minutes out of the pool, opened up the safe, or what was left of it, got the hard drive out, plugged it into a computer, and then printed off photos of everybody, and all the data was still there and intact. So trade shows can give you an amazing way to show off your products or services. Now, it can be something as simple as if you're retailing a product, you can get people to touch it or to feel it or to taste it or to see themselves with that product. What happens is your prospective client has an emotional connection to the product. So once they've got it, they don't want to let it go. As far as I'm concerned, I think probably the best way to sum up exhibiting at either a trade show or an expo is that it's speed dating. You have people who want what you've got and you're there. You try a few different pickup lines to engage with them. You then tell them a bit more information about yourself and then consummate the date and turn it into a sale, and then they move on and then you have your next date. So it is an amazing way to just quickly and swiftly have those connections. And then afterwards you'll follow them up for a phone call and have a more meaningful date and a meaningful connection with them. So I really think that they are a very powerful tool to have in your business toolbox. Too often people will look at it and go, oh my God, that is expensive. Because if you look at a booth costs are typically somewhere between $2,500 and up. and the limit is endless. Many expos, you're just paying for floor space, and then you're paying $10,000, $20,000 for your booth. Naturally, many small businesses don't pay that much for it. So I would have you consider when next you're looking at exhibiting, what is the cost per lead or cost per sale that you're generating from it. Now, with exhibiting, of course, there's many different types. Well, there's 4 key types. I just wanted to quickly touch on. The first one is the expo. The photo you see here is of the Victorian Motor Show, the car show down here. Essentially what that is it's B2C, or business to consumer. So it's pretty much putting out there what you've got so that customers can come along and look or touch or feel or buy or whatever they want to do. Now, a lot of research has been done as to why people will go to expos and trade shows. The top 2 reasons is that they want to find out what's new or they want to bargain. So typically at these kind of shows, if you've got something new or you've got a bargain, you need to let them know. So that is for the consumers. The next one is more business to business. They're more trade shows. Typically the business to consumer expo, the next ones are actually referred to as trade shows because it's done within the trade. This image is from Reed Gift Fair, and that to get in the door you must have your own ABN number and you must have registered for it. So you must be a registered business to be able to get in the door. Typically there's less actual selling done on site in terms of, sell a product or service and take it away. It's more that you're doing significant deals, particularly, more specifically, you'll be getting some leads, some very hot leads for the products that you're trying to sell and or buy. A more common one that we're starting to see more now is something like this. This is gold buyers at the local shopping centre. Essentially what they have is it's a transient store. It's not necessarily a permanent shop. It's something that they can move around, but it's putting them where there's a large flow of traffic. You also have things like wine cellars at airports. They have little wine tasting areas, etc. It's less it's less trade show in that it's not as targeted. People are not specifically there for them, but you can target where you put them in terms of you'll match your product to the target market. For example, wines at the airport are fairly well positioned because typically business people will be interested in wine. It is a target market. So they might come off a business trip, have a bit of a wine tasting and order some wine. Same with supermarkets, shopping centres. Typically people who go there are looking to buy things, and they may have old jewellery that they no longer want. So gold buyers have found that as a good spot to go to. The final one is your typical market. This is a picture of the Mundi market, one of my favourites up in Queensland. But there's many markets around it. Different people choose to sell their stuff at markets. Typically at markets, it's for lower priced goods, and it's also for more consumables, more sort of end user consumables. Today, our focus is really going to be on trade shows and expos in the business to consumer and business to business range. But if you do exhibit at any of these others, please feel free to ask a question about it, and I'm happy to address it. But they're the 4 kinds of trade shows, the 4 kinds of shows that are there. I suppose the main question people always ask is, well, what can go wrong? And there's a truckload of things that can go wrong. Some of the things that I've seen is that people's graphics aren't completed on time. They might have been getting some posters done and they haven't been finished. They might be organising some giveaway prizes or some branding items that had to be rushed at the last minute. So that means their costs can typically double, if not triple. I've been to several expos where the client is having their delivery company send their booth and their product and their stuff, and it doesn't turn up to the last day of a multiple-day show. I've seen one expo where the person was basically just standing there. They'd scavenged up some posters, they'd printed off some stuff off the internet from their website and just stuck it up on their back board and was standing in the booth. Other things is, like, you get lots of leads, but there's no follow-up. People sort of go back to work and forget that they were at the expo. One of the worst things is when you've got people on the booth who just don't care. They're not interested in being there. They are more interested in checking their phone for the latest things on Facebook. Some people decide that they need to get some booth babes or booth blokes. By this I mean the promotional staff. They typically are quite attractive and they dress in tight shirts. In IT shows and car shows, you nearly always have these attractive women in very tight clothing. Now, unfortunately, they might look good, but there's no substance there. Very often there's no substance. Sometimes there is, but usually there's not. So they look good, but they've got no idea, so you don't get closure. Other times you can be at the wrong show. Your show selection has been poor. At one of my clients, they had at the baby show, there was an investment company there, and they had completely missed the mark with their messages and what they're trying to achieve. So at the end, shows and exhibiting, it can be a great way to hemorrhage cash if you don't do them right. So what I want to share with you today is the way on how to do them right. What are some of the things that you can do that are going to double your return? Now, essentially, it is a 5-step process. So let me quickly show you the 5-step process. The first thing you want to do is increase the number of prospects you have. That doesn't mean that you want to just get more people walking past your booth and capture them and drag them across. It is about getting the right people at your booth at the right time. And there's a few things you can do to do that. You also want to increase your conversion rate in terms of how do we convert those people who have visited our stand into people who then go on to purchase from us. We also want to increase the size of the sale. So, for example, if you're selling a $20 item, can you get them to buy 2? Can you get them to buy 1 item and get the second one at half price? So you're actually getting more money across the table. But the next step is to how do I roll the work that I've done at the show into my standard business practice? So how do I make sure that if I get a sale at the show, that person then goes onto my database and gets followed up and becomes part of my standard business process? And then finally, how do I then repeat this process? How do I have my own system so when it comes to exhibiting that I can continue to do this? If you follow these 5 steps, you will double your return. Now I will go through this in further detail. Let's have a look at some of the numbers behind that. Let's say that you have a typical show. You might be open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., so you're looking around 7 hours. Typically, 2 minutes per person is generous. Usually it's longer. So if you're spending 2 minutes per person, you're pretty much going to have access to around 210 people or 200 people for the day. So if you can weed out, typically at a show, they're going to be interested in your products or service. So if you can get half of them as a qualified prospect, so people who are interested, you're looking at about 100 people. Let's say you can convert, so on the table there you'll see they've got prospects of 100. If you can convert 10 of those people into sales, or 10% of those people, you're looking at getting 10 of them. And let's say you're selling something for about $100, so you're talking about $1,000 worth of sales for that particular day at that show. Now these figures are fictional, but I just want you to see the process about how we can double it. Typically with trade shows, people do not follow up and then have repeat sales with them also. So what we want to do is put them into our standard business so we do get the repeat sale. So if you can increase these numbers by 20%, that is increase your conversion rate by 20%, increase your sales by 20%, increase your repeat sale by 20%, and increase your prospect number by 20%, it'll have a massive difference. Let's have a look at that. What that means is if I can increase my prospects from 100 to 120, that's a 20% increase. If I can increase my conversion rate from 10% to 12%, so it's just a 20% increase in my conversion rate, that puts me up to 14 people who are buying from me, 14 customers. If I then look at increasing my sales by 20%, so not just selling $100 worth, but $120 worth, that'll then put me up to $1,700 worth of sales. Now, if I can get a 20% repeated business, so that means that for my customers who are there, if I can get them to buy 20% worth of customers down the track, that'll lead to another $300 or so. So what that means is just by increasing these factors by 20%, which is really not a great deal, what I'm doing is doubling my sales. I'm going from what was originally the $1,000. So if we look here, originally you were looking at $1,000 worth of sales, and what you've done is you've increased your total sales now to the $2,073. So you're looking at doubling your sales. Now, when I've shown this to people before, they will say to me, oh my God, that is such a small amount of effort, that 20%, to actually double your sales. Most people think you need to do twice as much work, but the reality is it's not that much. Now, for some people who might think, no, I can't do that. That's too much. Then have a look at increasing it only by 10%. So if you're only increasing by 10%, so instead of having 10 people convert to sell, instead of having 100 people as prospects, you have 110 people. Instead of having 10 people convert to a sale, you're having 11. Instead of getting $100 sales, you're getting $110 sales. And then for your repeat business, you're only getting 10% of the sales again as repeat business. You're still getting a 44% increase. So you're going from that what was originally the $1,000 to now getting up to the $1,444. So we're not talking about having to do a massive amount. And I know for yourself, if you think about some of the things that you do in converting your prospects into sales or increasing sales, it is not a huge challenge to make those kind of increases. So what I would suggest to you is that there are some simple things that can be done. What I want to do is have a look at some of the things that you can do to do that. So those things are, I call them the 15 areas to address. Now I'm going to go through each of these, so it is a little bit overwhelming on the one slide. But basically, if you look at it, there is things that you can do pre or before the show, things that you can do during the show, and then things that you do after the show. And I've been moving my mouse around to highlight it to you, and then I realized that I haven't got it turned on, so you can't see it. So now I'm turning it on. Okay, so we're looking, here are the pre things that we can do. Then we have the during, in terms of the stuff that's done during the show and then after the show. What we've also done is looked at those 5 key areas that we talked about. Increasing your prospects, increasing your conversion rate, increasing your sales, and then including in your business. Excuse me. So I just want to go through a few of these so that you get the idea of how simple some of the changes can be for you. So if we have a look here at, let's start off with increasing the number of prospects. And let's have a look at, whoa, sorry about that, I've just jumped through a page. If we have a look at increasing the number of prospects. So in the beforehand phase, let me just highlight that for you so you know where we're looking at. I'm looking in this quadrant here in the pre-show, increasing your number of prospects. So it's doing things like inviting your existing customers. It's a great opportunity to send out some emails to your database saying, hey, we're exhibiting at this show. We've got the latest and greatest new version of it. It's a different color. Here's a wonderful thing. We'd love to see you there. And you'll be surprised at how many of your existing customers will come along. You might have some other people who you have done business with before, or they are prospects of yours, and you might say to them, why don't you come along? Here's a free ticket. When you exhibit at any show, chances are very high that you're going to get some free tickets from the organisers. So use them and send them out to your key prospects, the ones who you just want to get over the line or who you believe are going to be of significant value for it. And part of this is, as it has there, is define your target. Who is your target? Who are the people that you want to come up to you? So it may well be that you're at a certain show and you really want to narrow down the people that are coming through. So it's not just anyone who's here. It's the few people who are specifically aligned to what you want to get out of it. So that's a way that you can increase your prospects before the show. It's also very easy to increase your prospects during the show. What I've seen more and more happening now is that people will come to a show and they'll be at the expo and they will walk right down the middle of the aisle. They will not look at any of the exhibitors because they are scared of being sold to. I do not understand this. Why go to a show if you don't want to be sold to? My theory is always, if I can get the salesperson to do the hard work, Why wouldn't I? Let them work at giving me all the information I want versus me have to ask all the questions. So what it means for us as exhibitors is we've got to engage with them. We've got to grab their attention so they'll come and look at our product or service, and we need to do it in a non-threatening manner. I like to use humour purely because I like to have fun. If I'm going to be at an expo all day, I better be laughing. So one of the things that I did, I was at a show and I was dressing up in the empathy belly. And this is an apparatus that makes a man feel like they're pregnant. You have a large bladder of water, some very heavy weights, and a restrictive band. And for the ladies on the call, I'm the first to admit it comes nowhere near close to being pregnant, but it gives a bit of an idea. Now, I knew that my target market for this was not the men to wear it, but their partners, their female partners, to make them want to wear it. But I had to get the guys' attention. So what I did was I tried a few different pickup lines because, as I said before, when you're exhibiting, it is pretty much speed dating. So I had to try some different lines because they're walking past. I've got 2 seconds, that's it. The one that was most effective was when I'd see a couple walk past and I would say, "Excuse me, sir, can I make you pregnant?" And then when they turned around and they would see me wearing this empathy belly, that they would sort of look at it and go, "Oh, I don't really want to put that on." And then I'd turn to the wife or the partner and say, "It won't take long, just time for a quickie." Now, it was a little bit naughty, and I don't mean to offend anyone, but what it did was it made them laugh. They were no longer threatened, and then the partner would say to the man, "You are putting that on," and they would come over. And as they were trying it on, I would then play to the crowd that would gather, because nothing builds a crowd like a crowd. So it's all about how can I create some kind of scene where people are going to come and have a look at my product and try it. So typically, if you've got clothing, it's great to have people try it on and then ask people in the crowd, "What do you think of this? Does that look nice? How does she look? How does he look? What do you reckon of that?" And it creates better engagement. So all of a sudden, the others are thinking, "I want to try it on." You also need to have some good signage. As I said before, the top 2 reasons that people come in is they want a bargain or they want what's new. If you've got something new, you need a sign that says new. Make it easy for them to be the customer. It's all about how do I attract their attention and get them interested in coming along. So that's how you can increase your number of prospects during the show. Now, after the show, if you want to increase the prospects, it's really about how do you get people interested in your business for the next time you exhibit, or interested in your business as is. So that's really looking at some referrals from the customers that you might have picked up at the show, or some testimonials. Testimonials are a fantastic thing. Regardless of what product or service it is, testimonials are the best way to sell or get prospects because they don't feel like they're being sold to. They feel like that people who have used the product before are saying how wonderful it is, not the actual person who owns the product. So there's some of the different ways that you can increase your prospect. And I reckon if you do some of those things, it's not beyond belief to be able to increase the number of prospects that you can get to your stand by 20% of what you might expect. So the next thing you want to do is increase your conversion rates. So how do we increase the conversion beforehand? And it may well be, the very first thing is actually the third thing written there, which is define the need. So you want to look at what's the need of the person who's going to be interested in this product. It's not about the product. Whenever you sell anything, it's never about the product. It's always about the customer. What is their need? What do they want? What is the pain that they are suffering? So we can then fix the pain. Give it a bit of a squeeze first so they know it exists, but then fix it. So to increase the conversion, we need to know what is this pain or what is the need and pre-sell to it. So we're getting people who are pretty much coming along ready to buy. They're no longer a prospect. They've sort of pre-qualified themselves. Sometimes you might even have a pre-show event. What's happening at more and more trade shows now is that different exhibitors will have their own personal, sort of a smaller show or a smaller event prior to the show. Typically, it will happen in the hotel where the event's being, or the hotel where the event is being held, or near where the event's being held. They'll book out one of the meeting rooms and have for their top 10 or top 20 prospects, have some one-on-one time or have some more intimate setting to pre-sell the information. Now, they might even get some sales on the day, but essentially what they're doing is pre-selling to that market. Now, during the actual sales, during your actual show or during your expo when you're exhibiting, it really is about your sales skill and your selling skill. And one of the articles I've written is that the best salespeople never sell. It's not about going, hello shoppers, have we got a deal here for you? Come on down today, out they go, we've got some bargains, we're here at the local market, $5 a tray. That's not going to work. But what will work is, as we said before, finding out what's their need, what's their pain, and then having some kind of conversation with them and be able to present a solution to their pain. I'm a big fan of bundling. So it's the kind of thing also, if you have a solution, to not just say, we have this, it is $100, but to have a gold, silver, and a bronze. So that there's like, well, this is 100, this is 200, and this is 500. And the things that you get different in are, and it's not just, well, the 200 one's twice as much. There's different services and features there. Now, sometimes if you're selling something that's a bit more expensive, they are not going to buy at the show. They might, but they're less likely to. So you need to make sure that you have excellent lead capture. Recently, I was exhibiting at a Meetings Mart, which is a show for people who organise meetings and need motivational speakers and trainers, etc. And I just generated a small piece of paper. It was A5 in size. In fact, no, it was half of A5, so it was A6. And it basically just had the key information I wanted for my database. It had some questions that would help qualify them as being people who are interested, as people who are spending the money. And it was amazing, as I would talk with people and they'd say, tell me, what do you do? I'd say, well, before I tell you what I do, let me ask you a couple of questions about what you do so we can find out whether or not, you want to talk with me further or whether you're better off spending your time elsewhere. And most people were really happy with that. And I could just walk down my form. And in fact, I had a few people say, here, let me fill it out. And they would just fill out the form for me. But it meant that I could walk away with rock-solid leads and rock-solid information about those leads, which I could then qualify and say, well, these are A's, as in they've got a much higher chance of doing something. These are B's, which is sort of interested, but I'm not really sure. And these are C's, which there's no chance they're ever going to do anything with me. So it meant that I could then really focus on the ones that I wanted to convert across. So they're the kind of things that you can do to increase your conversion rate at the show. So sales skill is definitely one of it. And part of that is having the right people on the booth. I can't stress that enough. I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but it's so important to have the right people on the booth. And frequently the business owner or the product creator is not the right person. They're too attached to themselves and the product. They're not attached enough to the end client. That takes us to the post-show in terms of increasing conversion. Part of that is you can add them to the tribe, maybe sign them up to a newsletter, maybe get them on your Facebook page and keep them informed about it. Sometimes people won't buy at a show. They feel under pressure. They don't want to receive information from you, but they're happy to be a fan on your Facebook page or something of that nature, so they can keep in touch with what's going on. So that's some of the things you can do afterwards. Now to talk about increasing the sales beforehand, part of that is, as I said before, looking at your pricing and your product mix, and that is with the gold, silver, bronze package kind of thing, and looking at how are we going to be able to present this in a manner that is palatable for them. The price point is appropriate. Typically at trade shows, you might be someone who sells to the trade and also sells directly to the customer. So you need to make sure your pricing is not going to annoy your other people that you wholesale to, but it also represents some kind of bargain for the visitors as well. So there are some key decisions you need to make around pricing. And also, not only are we defining the need as we did in the conversion, but also we need to define the product. What is the best product for this show? Frequently I've seen at different shows people with tens of products, sometimes even hundreds of products, and it confuses the customer. Sometimes less is more. It really is looking at what is the focus for me and my business at this show. What is the focus? And it might be one or two products. So that way the customer can come up or the visitor can come up and say, this is what you're trying to sell or do. Not, oh my God, what is all this stuff and what do you do? And I'm confused. I'm too confused. I'm walking away. It's too hard. We don't want to scare the people away. So then during the show, as I talked before, it's about doing the bundling and the value add and some kind of upsell. And if you look at any of the 7-Elevens or petrol stations, they're brilliant at it. Whenever you go in to buy your petrol, they say, did you want some of our special lollies? It's 2 for $3. One of the things that I would recommend that you do, if you are selling a consumable product or something which they're going to have to use over and over, if you're talking about the product, you're getting the signs that they're interested, rather than saying, would you like one, I would say, how many would you like? Let them decide. You might find that they're interested in multiple numbers of these products. So it really is important to let them decide how many that they're going to want. You can then look at different varieties to sell them after the show also. So let's just have a look here at some of the different ways that you may use to upsell. So that might be something as simple as after the show saying, we've had a great show, as a bonus because you bought something from us at the show, we're going to let you buy these 3 for the price of 2. Or we've got a special deal, if you book this now, you get something else. So you can actually follow up after the show to increase the number of the level of sales. Naturally, if you have people that have bought from you, you want to make sure that they have some kind of account manager. Even if it is just a smaller item, you need to make sure that they have coverage, that they have some kind of care factor. Now, it could be a membership site. They're very popular also. The next 2 lines, I'm not really going to go over a great deal. We're talking about how do you include it within your business. So what we're talking about is what are your processes before, during, and after the show. So pretty much they're things that you're going to cover with the people who are working there, so they know what do we need to do to get ready beforehand, what are the things that we do at the show, and then afterwards, how do we pull this into our typical way of running our business? How do we put them into our typical sales funnel? Now, the reason I'm not going to cover that is that I have the 7 common mistakes that I want to get onto. But I suppose one of the key things that is so important to do is to measure. You need to make sure you have the right measures before, during, and after the show. So if we just pop down to the measures area here, and that is defining what are we here for and how will we measure if this has been a success? Is it typically sales alone? And I would strongly suggest to you the answer is no. And then if it becomes, well, it's here for branding. And many people I speak to say, I'm doing it for branding. My first question is, how will you measure whether it's been successful? Now, sometimes they'll say the number of brochures that are given away. I don't believe that that represents good branding. So I would suggest to you that you want to make sure that you know why you are there and how you're measuring. Then during the show, you need to make sure you capture those measures. If it is around the number of sales, are you accurately capturing it? If it's around the number of leads, if it's your cost per lead, you need to know the number of leads. And then finally, after the show, you need to process those measures, make sure you've caught them all, and then review it. You need to ask yourself the question, was this worth it? Is this something we need to do continually? Now, I'm a big believer when you are choosing the right expo for you or your product, that it is be something that you commit to. I would not suggest you do it as a one-off and then make your decision solely on whether that worked or not. I would suggest to you that you need to commit to it for at least 2 years. My experience has been, if I have been to a show, when I go to it a second time, people start going, oh, it's you again. And they're more likely to buy from me the second time because they've got that repetition of seeing me, but also they know that I'm not a fly-by-nighter. I'm not just a one-off, here's a quick product, thanks very much. That's one thing that people who have those little booths in the supermarket suffer from. Typically, they are cheap Chinese products that they're selling. Sometimes they're great jewelry, sometimes it's gold mart, but with some of the cheap stuff that's there, a lot of people will think, yeah, but if something goes wrong, you're not going to be here in 6 weeks when I need to come back and get it fixed. So it is about making sure that we have some way of giving that ongoing representation so there is that familiarity. All right. So now that we know the 15 different areas that we need to address, I just want to go over what are some of the big issues or the big problems that people have when they are exhibiting at different shows. Before I do that though, I just want to see, is there any questions that anyone has regarding any of these different areas? If you've got a question, just stick your hand up and I can unmute you. By sticking your hand up, don't sit at your desk and raise your hand, but click on the little hand icon there. So does anyone have any questions? I'm getting no response, so I'll take that as a no. All right, so what I've got now is the top 7 exhibiting mistakes and how we can avoid them. As I said before, people do not know why they are exhibiting. They get into, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time, or someone else was doing it, or we need more sales, or I read it in a book somewhere. It's so important that you've got to know why you're there. You've got to know what you want to achieve out of it. It has to be part of your overall strategy. It cannot be just a one-off kind of thing. And it can't just be we have the strategy in terms of we know why we're here for the show. It also has to look into the next one of the top mistakes, which is that you don't know what are the objectives. What are we trying to get out of this show? What are some of the things that we think are important? What's your reason to be there? Now, at a recent show I was at, Luna Park at Sydney, we're exhibiting there. And when I was having a discussion with them and said, well, what are you here for? And they said, well, we want to increase the number of parties that we're having at our show at Luna Park. We want to increase the number of the kids' parties. And I had a look at their booth and I said to them, nowhere here have you got that listed. There is no signage that says you even have kiddie parties. There's no pictures of children's parties. So there's no way for anyone to relate to what you want to sell them. So make sure that what you're there for is easily communicated to the people. If you're there to sell, great. Put signs up saying expo sale, or look at this bargain, or 40% off, up to 40% off. You know, make sure people know why you're there. There was a researcher who was looking to getting people to volunteer for their research. And again, we talked about why you're here. And I said, how are people going to know this? We need to put up some signs that really narrow down, and they're after a specific kind of person. So we said, okay, let's put like, are you a person who smokes? Do you have asthma? Ask about our research program. So straight away, people could see the 2 questions, know that's what they were there for, and then ask about it if they were interested. And if you were a non-smoker, didn't have asthma, you just walk past. It wouldn't make any difference. And it made it great for the exhibitor as well, because their time wasn't wasted with tire kickers or people who weren't really part of it. The next mistake is people don't know how to measure their success. As I said before, you need to have your measures. How do you know whether you should come back? How do you know whether it's been successful for you or not? And sales alone is not going to measure it. It'll be a part of it, but there'll also be leads. There'll also be some branding. There'll be some networking. Some of the exhibitors I've worked with have said one of the best things they get out of the show is communication with the other exhibitors. And what they end up doing is creating joint venture projects coming out of it. So you really do need to understand what is success for you when it comes to talking about your show. The next mistake that people will often make is they do nothing before the show but get the booth organised. That picture there is of the booth that I had at the Meetings Mart. As you can tell, it's very low tech. It's a very, very simple booth, but it was quite effective because the paper had lots of questions on it that people could relate to, and it had a burst of colour and a few other bits and bobs. But too often I've seen people worrying about, well, what's the colour of the cloth, and what sort of lights will we have, and should we have a data show, and what were some of the other things we've done. They're worrying about the booth. They're not worrying about how do we get people to the booth. Who are some of the people that we can have come along? The organisers will get people through the door, but don't rely on them for the only people to come through the door. Do your own marketing beforehand. Do your own advertising about the show. Send information out to your database. Do some joint ventures with other people who you might be interested in working with, and get them to spread the message about the show that's coming up so that you have more people who are of your niche to be there. It is also about the planning. Look, don't get me wrong, the booth's important, but in many ways, some of the other things that you do before the booth is as important, if not more important, to make sure that you do get the return you're after on your booth. Booth behaviour. I have an absolute bugbear with people sitting down at a booth. I can't handle it. It's like when you go shopping and you go in and there's someone on the phone talking to Cheryl or Deidre, and they're just having a chat about what they're doing on the weekend. They're not present for you. They're not there to serve you. If you're sitting down, straight away you're sending the kind of image that you're not really interested. You're more focused on you and how tired you are. So it's all about, how do I make sure that I am present for my visitor? So it is about not chewing gum, not being on your mobile phone, not having a lunch or eating something. It is okay to be drinking some water or drinking something there, but if you need a break, get away from the booth. I know for me, even for the smallest of shows, I'll make sure that there's at least 2 of us on the booth so that I can step away and have a break, and to make sure that I remain fresh. So, and one of the comments I've put there is ignore your feet. Trade shows are known for giving you pain in the feet. All I can say is suck it up, princess. Your feet are going to hurt. Make sure you wear comfortable shoes. I've spent some serious money on very, very comfortable shoes so that I can last longer, because there are always concrete floors, and standing up for 7, 8, 9 hours on a concrete floor, it really hurts. So look after yourself, but make sure that you know why you're there, and you are there for the visitor. So make sure you engage with the visitor. Now, I do know with social media, there's a lot of people who say, oh, I need to send Twitters and I need to be on Facebook. And can I suggest to you that you can still do that, but by sending someone away from the booth? Who's more important, the people on Twitter who aren't at your booth, or the people who are standing there looking at you saying, please serve me? So I would suggest to you that you need to be really focused on the people who are already there. One of the things that it constantly amazes me is people forget that they were at a show. After the show, they'll go back to the office, there'll be a truckload of email where there'll be stuff in their in tray, and they forget that they were there. They've got a wad of leads to follow up, or all these different sales, and they'll go, yeah, I'll get to them later. The research has shown that any lead you get from a trade show has a half-life of 48 hours. So what that means is you've got 2 business days to follow up with them, or their interest level will drop by 50%. Another 2 days later, it'll drop by another 50%. So it's important that you make sure that you are going to be able to follow up with the people that you need to. When I go to a trade show, I book out the next 2 days afterwards for follow-up, so that I don't take any appointments. It means that I can be present to make sure I get the value out of the lead. You know, I spent all this money to be at a show. I don't want to waste it. So I'm there following up. Also, make sure that you get feedback from your team. Find out, what do we do well? What do we do poorly? What could we do better? What ideas have you got so we can have a better show next time? Typically, the organizer will also have many statistics. I know some of the good shows will tell you the number of people through the door. They'll tell you that they'll do estimates on number of spend. There's a whole lot of statistics that they'll have to get through to you. So make sure that you follow up with the organizer to get those kind of statistics, because it helps you with your assessment on, has this been successful and worthwhile for us? Now, the top 7 exhibiting mistakes is that they do not measure the success. You've got to measure your return on investment and your return on objectives. This may include your cost per lead, but it is, again, asking the question, has it been worthwhile for us? Is this the kind of thing that we want to continue to do? So it's very important. Because at the end of the day, as I said, when you're exhibiting at shows, it's like speed. Everyone is looking for a date. Even Darth Vader is looking for someone. He's just gone to the wrong place. But everyone is looking for a date. Everyone is looking for something to get out of the show. So with the speed dating, make sure you've got it there for them. Make sure you've got what they want and you really are connected with what they're trying to achieve. That brings us to the end of the webinar. But again, are there any questions? I'm going to, what am I going to do? I am going to go to the questions area. Michelle has just said that they're a little bit late. That's okay. I have recorded this and it will be available if you want to share it with others on the website. So are there any other questions? Anyone, just click on the raise your hand. Okay. What I want to do is just find out now, having seen this and knowing what you know yourself, I just want to get a bit of an idea. How confident are you to exhibit? So I'm going to do another poll. So what I'd like you to do is, if you can just have a bit of a vote there and tell me, how confident are you in exhibiting? It'll allow me to get a bit better understanding of how you feel. Okay, just waiting for another vote. Final one. Alrighty, great, thank you for that. All right, good, let me share the results with you just so you can see what you think. There's a couple of people there who think they should be running the webinar. Fantastic. As I said before, this is just a way to exhibit. This is not the only way. There's many skills out there. But it's good to see that for the majority of you that you feel okay about what you're doing and you're good at it. And there's others who are just beginning, and that's very fair. So thank you for that. All right. The next thing to do is to realize that action is the magic word, not words are the magic action. So coming out of this, what will you do differently? So it's been fun to be here, and a few people have said, yes, we've got some good information out of it. But at the end of the day, if you do nothing different, it's been a waste of your time. I strongly encourage you to look at what 3 things I can do differently to get more out of my next show when next I exhibit. Now, if you want to, and for yourself or for any of your friends, I have a free audio CD where I was interviewed talking about trade shows. That's at www.doubleyourreturn.com. You're more than welcome to go there and get that. You'll also get a free special report which covers it in a bit more detail. As I said, I will be publishing this. It has been recorded, so it will be published, and I'll send you the link to the website where it will be afterwards. Apart from that, thank you very much. Unless anyone has any further questions, I wish you having a fabulous rest of the day, and it has been an absolute pleasure to be here.